gentlemen, we simply believe for so long ICC has been inherently ineffective. It has been a body of words, not actions. It couldn't simply get the job done. It has been detrimental to justice, to politics, and has been detrimental to all what UN has stood for so long. So that's why we are proud to propose the motion the ICC should have the authority to investigate and prosecute any cases. So on to the definitions. We define ICC, the International Criminal Court, as the body investigating and prosecuting those criminals. Currently, those criminals should be referred by the member states, but under our status quo, ICC will have the authority to choose that criminals by itself and actively investigate and prosecute their crimes. We define any cases as any case that we deem significant, causing a major harm to the public. We are not talking about pickpocketing or that type of crimes. We are talking about significant, big-scale crimes like genocide, like war crimes. So a clarification before we actually start this debate. We say this is a should debate. We don't have to prove you that countries will support this, but we just need to prove you that the world would be better off if the ICC had such an authority under the status quo. So as the first speaker, I will be talking about how we are bringing a solution to this problem and the principles we stand for. Then my second speaker, Atakan, will talk about media attention and the perception this will create. So on to the problem analysis. First, we say we can investigate anything we want under the status quo. In order to label someone as a criminal, the proposition should first come by the member states, and we believe member states are inherently biased because of their opportunistic and populist ideas and as nations. So that's why we can't nominate. We can't just choose label all the criminals in the world just because some countries don't report them. And secondly, countries often don't want to accept the measures. We can't get info from them. We can't send reporters to them, and we believe it is quite detrimental. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Well, you talk about how we have this bias, but don't you think that the fact that the International Criminal Court has delegations from so many different countries, that this actually spreads this bias and eliminates it?
No, it doesn't really spread, because US, for example, is not a member of ICC, right? No one can deem US as the criminal country or its members as the criminals, because actually US is not a member of that. Even though countries may report them, even though a country may just say let's go after this criminal, ICC cannot take the necessary measures because that country is not in ICC, and that's a fundamental problem. Secondly, we say that in UN, in SC, there are 5 permanent members, right? So, for example, even though we want to get to Syria, we can't because some countries actually prevent this. We believe this is actually also happens in the case of ICC. Some countries, just to cover up their crimes, do not want these investigations happening, and this is actually detrimental. Secondly, we say this is quite bad because countries like Turkey just run away with their crimes they have done. In Cyprus, China runs away from their crimes, and we cannot prosecute those countries. We still couldn't find Ömer al-Bashir because he's simply running away. He's running away to other countries which are not the member states of ICC, and we are just waiting him to come to France. But guess what? He doesn't, because he knows he may be caught right there. So as the proposition, we are bringing a solution to that problem. We are investigating, prosecuting those people. We can actively go to Ömer al-Bashir's villa in order to get him, because we will have the authority in this case. Secondly, we say we won't be that biased, because although the board members of ICC may have some biases as well, they will be more objective than the member states because they don't have political concerns. And also this will eventually bring even more practical outcomes. First, we say this will be good for the justice itself. We believe justice was the basic foundation our governments relied on, and it is inherently diminished in your case. Justice, we believe, was the contract of being a human. It is a basic human expectation, and that was why people agreed to live in societies. They gave up some of their rights, some of their freedoms, in order to get justice, in order to get prosperity, right? So we believe, under our case, we actively penalize those people, and we send the message that if you do something wrong, that ICC is everywhere. We will catch you up, and we will penalize you. You will face the results of your crimes. And in this case, we say justice is far more important than the sovereignty, because sovereignty is actually a way for politicians, for countries to get away with their crimes because of their opportunistic populist aims. Thirdly, we say we are bringing retribution to those people. We are making the people in Iraqi villages who got raped by US soldiers some retribution. Those people will get settlements, and those people will feel more comfortable as a moral return. So people abused by CONI will be somehow more happier, and we also say that those criminals worsen the lives of people fully. They made children soldiers, they stole babies, they killed thousands of people, creating massacres in those countries, and sovereignty in face of that much crime is simply nothing, ladies and gentlemen. And we also say that it is fundamentally bringing a deterrence mechanism to those countries, to US, to China, for example. Those countries will not know that they will be penalized if they are to mess with their people and if they use excessive force against them. Secondly, we say criminals will also be deterred, because they will know that they cannot just run away to a non-member state right now or go to a neighboring country. ICC will be simply everywhere, and there is no escape from it. We will be actively criminalizing those people. And as our last principal point, we say that with the ICC we will actually have more objective rules under this universal justice system. We understand that some countries, when an incident happens, is biased because they are the ones that are primarily affected. We have seen examples in the US. They have issued the Patriot Act, which denies the right to bodily integrity, right to speech, right to lawyer of terrorist people. They just put terrorists to Guantanamo and they torture them right there. We believe this bias countries have inherently diminishes the value of justice on a national scale, and for those type of crimes we need a more objective understanding of justice, and this can only be achieved through ICC. So as a team proposition today, we tell you there is a problem. The ICC has just put up words but cannot get the jobs done. We need to make them more powerful, and that's why we are proud to stand in proposition.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Jan Jacob, or Jacob, I'm not sure which, to present the first negative case.
To quote the Prime Minister, "We don't need to prove that this model will be effective, we just need to prove that it'll kind of sort of be justified." We don't agree with that very much outside opposition, because we think that if the International Criminal Court were to suddenly become an ineffective body, even if they had good intentions, they wouldn't be able to follow up on them. But more importantly, we would say that these intentions, these things that the International Criminal Court would be doing or should be doing under their model, don't stand. We don't agree with what they're trying to put the International Criminal Court through. But even in the model that they're right, they still won't be able to get it done. We'll be explaining this pretty clearly throughout the opposition case. But before I get into the opposition case, which has two main points that we're going to be bringing forward in the first bit, one about accountability, second about international backlash, I want to first clash with what we've seen from side government so far. Well, first actually let you know that we're going to be proving two things to you throughout this debate. First off, that if they got absolute power in the International Criminal Court, one, it would become an ineffective body, and two, even if it was effective, it would harm the international community. So let's talk about what we've seen come out from side government so far. They talked to us, like we said, we think that they do have to prove an effectiveness, they do have to prove that this mechanism will allow the International Criminal Court to execute on their plans, and so on. But let's talk about this idea of an ineffective International Criminal Court. They talked to you about a bias. They said that the International Criminal Court can't do things because it's biased a certain way. We'd like to point out that if you look at the member states that compose the International Criminal Court, Mali, Germany, Argentina, France, Kenya, the United Kingdom, Uganda, Costa Rica, Brazil, you've got people from all walks of life here. We don't see like a specific one narrow-ended point of view. We see an international point of view because the International Criminal Court is accountable to the international community, something that gets absolutely destroyed under their model in the House today. So let's look at another idea here they brought up. They said if you're not in the International Criminal Court, then you can't be persecuted by the International Criminal Court. We like to call this out as blatantly factually incorrect. We'd say that like a country like Libya, not exactly a member state, like they can still be totally held accountable to the International Criminal Court. We'd say that like this happens all the time. We'd say that like this is pretty essential for them to understand today's debate.
On that point,
they also said that like they cover up their crimes, a country can cover up their crimes with sovereignty, and that's the only purpose sovereignty serves. We say that sovereignty actually has a much bigger purpose. Sovereignty makes sure that the government is accountable to the people. The justice system that the people see are accountable to the people. And when the people have a justice system that doesn't speak to them, put forward by people that are supposed to speak for them, that this falls and they are represented in the ways that they want to and that they have the right to under a sovereignty of a country, which we stand for in the House today. So like we have a number of other points of clash. Also they brought this idea of a deterrence mechanism, which is the last thing I'm going to rebut before getting into my constructive material. They talked about how the International Criminal Court going out and attacking and going out and being an offensive force is going to give them the ability to deter people. We'd say that like if that renders the International Criminal Court to be ineffective, it doesn't deter anybody. If you can't have an effective body, you aren't deterring anyone from doing something bad. We say that that's something they need to understand on their side of the House. So let's look at today's case from side oppositions. We're going to be first bringing forward this idea of accountability and sovereignty. Then we're going to look at international backlash. Let's look at this first idea. We'd say that like a body that has the ability to do whatever it wants, unchecked, unreserved, we'd say that that is an inherently principally bad thing. We don't see that that any sort of associated body that has the ability to do whatever it wants without accountability can be properly checked by the people. Because if you're supposed to be someone that is accountable to the people, like what happens in today's cases in the regular International Criminal Court is you are like sanctioned to go do something when a member state raises a problem. The International Criminal Court now being something that isn't actually accountable to the international community or its member states, we see that that International Criminal Court becomes like a body that can do whatever it wants. And that is an inherently opposite thing than what the international community wanted when they made the International Criminal Court come into play. We say like the only reason it came into play was because they wanted to be able to voice their opinions and have those fought for. Not to have a regular body kind of brought up out of nowhere that can do whatever it wants. We say that that's an incredibly opposite thing than what they were fighting for in the first place. We say that like that is incredibly unprincipled. Secondly, we like to talk about this idea of sovereignty. Like you have a responsibility as a regulatory body. You have a responsibility as a body that can make decisions to the people that put you there. We say that like that is why we have federal court systems, whether the people representatives are elected or put in place by people that are elected by people they have elected. We say that like those regulatory bodies are in check because they are accountable to their citizens. We say that the International Criminal Court does not function like that. We say that that is principally wrong. That people have a right to be like have their fates decided by, or should have the ability to have their like protection decided by people that they want protecting them, people that they said they want put in place, whether it be the American model of directly electing judges, or whether it be more like the Canadian model per se, where you elect people who will then put judges into play. We think like that's a level of accountability that we see as very important to the international community and important in the realm of sovereignty. Like we don't see them understanding this, and they've abolished sovereignty on a pretty quick plea. Go ahead.
We think holding accountable like countries like USA who has continuously continued war crimes is more important than holding accountable to like 15 lawyers.
Okay, so like let's talk about that for a second. We'd say like I'm going to clash with this very thoroughly in my second point about how this will render the International Criminal Court entirely ineffective. But we'd say that just generally on this principled ground, if the international community does not want to try the United States, then the United States should not be tried. The people in the international community are the people who should be holding their members accountable as global citizens. We say like that is the responsibility of the International Criminal Court. We say like that is very important for a side government to understand, that this is not just some sort of random body. This is a body that has an accountability to a group of people. So I've talked to you very principally about like why having a set of power is wrong. To be able to do whatever you want unchecked, to be able to infringe on sovereignty unchecked, that's unfair. Let's talk about how even if it was fair, even if it was kind of right, this will render the International Criminal Court a completely ineffective body. So what do we see today in our status quo? We see that like whenever a country wants to go and the International Criminal Court investigate something, we did like the International Criminal Court will do that because it's been asked to. It has been requested by the international community to step up to be the Clark Kent of the global community, and that's pretty cool. That's something that we find to be pretty important, not at this time. We'd say that the reason that's pretty awesome is because like if you don't have the support of the international community, then you are like inherently going to lose your ability to execute on things that you want done. Why is it the case? Because the International Criminal Court doesn't necessarily have an army. The International Criminal Court isn't necessarily like this one body that can like go in and swoop in and take someone out. We say that the International Criminal Court will find someone guilty, but it needs to have the support of the international community to hold that person accountable. We say that like if the International Criminal Court can't go and bring someone in for questioning or like bring someone in and detain them if they've done something wrong, then like the International Criminal Court can't get its job done. It can't stop injustice. We'd say that like it has to have the support of a nation, maybe like the United States, a nation with an army, a nation with a force that can go in and get the job done. Because if they don't have that, then there's no way for them to actually execute on what they feel is right or wrong. We'd say that justice can only be served not when it's written on a piece of paper, but when actions can be taken to counter the unjust actions in our society. So we'd say it's very important for the international community to be able to support the International Criminal Court in measures when they need to have like justice being served. Because if the International Criminal Court is not supported by the international community, if they do not have the recommendation of the international community to go and take action, then like we're seeing an International Criminal Court that can't ultimately execute on the step, like execute when they need to. I would say like if we want to look to a model where the International Criminal Court can go get things done when need be, we look at the status quo. When the status quo says like to the International Criminal Court, all right, we want you to go try this person, we want you to go try Muammar Gaddafi or whatever, like then Muammar Gaddafi can get actually brought to justice on a principle basis and then actually brought to justice practically. We'd say that like for the international backlash that they do not recognize that they're causing to actually have an ineffective International Criminal Court, and the fact that an International Criminal Court with absolute power is morally and principally wrong, we do not see this motion can stand. We see this at opposition.
Right, it's now my pleasure to invite Atakar to present the second affirmative statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, our proposition today talked about saving lives, saving people, and giving justice to people who have been hurt by countries such as the US, Russia, and China. We as our proposition believe the utmost important thing in this debate is the justice that we give to rape victims, to people who have been abused, and to people who have been effectively tortured, ladies and gentlemen. What does that? We argue today that it is obviously necessary to have an international body that can prosecute people who countries don't want prosecuted. That we want a body which can go to the US, which can go into Libya and prosecute people. Side opposition answer was, we do. The side opposition said, we did account Libya. We did hold Libya accountable, but the primary difference Side proposition is here for is punishing Libya, is punishing countries and punishing people who have harmed human rights and who continue harming human rights, ladies and gentlemen. We said, the Side opposition said that our whole case is ineffective, that our whole case doesn't work. We have two answers for that. We believe that our case is effective, no, thank you, and that the countries will submit to the ICC's needs and wants because of all of the international backlash they have talked about. We believe when a country says, no, I do not want crimes prosecuted or crimes checked into in my country, the international arena, we believe, no thank you, is obviously going to get mad at that country. And even if that wasn't true, we believe that the ICC effectively can punish countries which are hiding criminals, which do not want criminals to be prosecuted. No thank you. We believe we show effectivity. Now, then we said we have deterrence for countries and Side deterrence from countries from no thank you, from doing war crimes, from torturing people, so on and so forth. Side opposition's only answer was, if you're not effective, you do not have deterrence. And I have showed you deterrence, thereby we already have I have showed you that we're effective, thereby we already have deterrence, no thank you. Now, Side opposition, throughout this debate, argue that obviously that the justice we have does not, no thank you, represent people. Now, we don't believe that. We believe justice obviously represents people because in our system, when people do not get the justice they need, when governments cannot give justice to people, we go into countries and give the people the justice they want. That, no thank you, is how you give people justice, not by simply doing nothing, ladies and gentlemen. Then they said the ICC can do anything they want and that is inherently bad. We don't believe that. And we believe that is very, very obvious. We think that is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Why? First of all, the ICC can't do anything it wants. It can only go into countries if the governments cannot catch criminals. ICC can only do certain things, and we believe, no thank you, countries can sue ICC, and international backlash applies to the ICC as well, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe their argumentation about how the ICC can do anything and everything it wants falls. Then they said ICC has no accountability. We say ICC doesn't do crimes. ICC doesn't really have anything it needs to be accountable for, and even if it can't catch criminals, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We say that we would add another safety net, another power to catch criminals, no need for accountability. And even if there was a need, we say the international backlash, and again, effectively suing ICC is the accountability we need. Then Side opposition argued that sovereignty was more important than the justice we bring to rape and murder victims. We say sovereignty is made up by countries who use sovereignty for their own goals, such as the United States of America, and then we say, obviously, a person's bodily integrity, and I will take you in a second, and a person's right to not get tortured is much more important than sovereignty. Go.
Sure, you want the ICC to be effective, but when you prosecute countries like the US or Europe, you effectively disengage them, taking funding and central resources away.
No, ladies and gentlemen, the ICC obviously is effective, first of all, because we can, as the UN, punish countries if they do not consent to the wants and needs of the ICC. Then we say ICC is obviously effective because of the international backlash Side opposition was talking about. Was talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Now coming to the last argument Side opposition made, they said that the ICC will have biases, that the ICC is inherent, that ICC can commit crimes, so on and so forth, and is no different than countries which have biases. We say obviously 15 lawyers which have been elected from different countries have less bias compared to countries which only go and work for their own wants and needs. Then we say, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, the ICC and the people who lead the ICC can change if they're ineffective, if they have biases, and we can obviously find people who do not have biases. We believe Side opposition's argumentation and reasoning in this debate falls. What does Side op need to do right now? Side op has to show why, whilst we save people who get tortured, raped, and all of that, and in fact give countries deterrence and less incentive to harm people, why they value sovereignty over that, why they value rights made up by countries over that. Now, I will have two substantive points. In the first one, I will show you how, through the ICC, media and people can effectively learn more about the bad things countries have done, and thereby the countries are even more disincentivized to do crimes. And then I will talk about how we actually give people justice, how we promote their how we actually make people more prone to justice, and how we make people value justice more and feel safe. First argument, thesis of this argument is that inherently people react to things, especially the bad things that countries have done. How does this work? Ladies and gentlemen, we believe countries such as the US, Russia, and China has violated human rights throughout the world. They have murdered, raped, assaulted, and harmed people throughout the world, and they have effectively covered their tracks. And even if, when they didn't, countries such as really Vietnam, Korea, and all of that doesn't really have much power over the United States, we believe. What does the ICC do? The ICC, first of all, punishes these countries, effectively making news and effectively making, effectively making people more aware about what these countries have done. And when the ICC finds new things that the countries have done, the media obviously presents that and makes people aware of what countries have been done. This, and I will take you in a second, this has two effects. First of all, it makes people more prone to things and harms which countries have done, and then it deters countries, which I will explain. Go.
Okay, but you haven't really explained why, like, just because suddenly we allow them to go after any case they want, they can suddenly get into every nook and cranny.
I have answered this 3 times. First of all, of the international backlash, people will inherently want countries to allow the ICC to investigate because they will think that the country has something to hide. Then I said the ICC will effectively be able to punish countries because countries effectively violate the law when they do not help the ICC. Now, we say that inherently countries do not want their people to go against them. Countries value when people support them. If we actually show people how and why a government or a country has gone wrong, people obviously lose support to that party. Thereby, countries become less prone to do the same war crimes they have done. What the second substantive matter says that we effectively make people believe in justice. Because often countries cannot give justice to their citizens, such as countries like Vietnam, so on and so forth. When we step into those countries, show people that justice will be reprimanded, that even if they are wrong, that we as the ICC do give justice to those people, and we inherently believe that is valuable, because what we do, we reassure people that they will have justice, that they are safe, and and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, side proposition in this debate values over sovereignty and other things that side opposition has given, the right of bodily integrity, the right to have justice, and inherently being a proper human being. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Tatiana to present the second negative speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, the side proposition that we have seen today, well, they don't really seem to grasp how the international community really works. They seem to believe that the international community is ignorant. They seem to believe that the international community has no interest in prosecuting crimes. And they seem to believe that a body of people held accountable to no one is a better jury to do so. We're going to be disproving this by reconstructing the case we've heard from side opposition so far, taking down what we've heard from side proposition, and talking about this new idea about blurring lines and how we really can't look at any judgments when it gets past crimes on humanity. So that's the constructive case I'm going to be bringing to you today. I'll be doing that after. But first, let's just get into a bit of rebuttal and reconstruction. Now, throughout this debate, the theme on side proposition has been this idea of the ICC can expose a country. The ICC can be everywhere. The ICC can achieve everything. And we have this response to that. What we're going to tell you is we don't think the international community doesn't know what's going on. We don't think that the international community doesn't know about human rights abuses in China. We don't think that the international community doesn't know that people are being killed in Syria. We don't think the international community is just like, let's turn China down. We don't think that's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that side proposition, no thank you, has a really skewed perspective. Now what they told you is that, we want to, no thank you, the ICC will go everywhere, we'll get it on camera, we'll prove that they're guilty, we'll show it to the people, and they'll be mad at their government. Okay, so the thing we see is, first of all, we don't see why this changes. We think in the status quo, when a country is sitting around and they're like, hey, Libya is kind of hurting their people. They do what they actually did in the past. They go to the UN, they propose charges against Muammar al-Gaddafi, and they send it to the ICC. What we see is that Gaddafi was actually charged with criminal charges by the ICC, and what happens is he was actually prosecuted and able to be prosecuted on those charges. We don't think the international community just sat around, no thank you, and was like, we're not going to do anything. So we think that that example ultimately falls. But what we would actually say is this is actually true in a lot of cases. We think that whenever possible, someone in the international community will report the human rights abuses. No, thank you. They will report these crimes against humanity. But what we would say is if they don't, there's a good reason why. We think that if for some reason the President of the United States was doing something that was slightly harmful, we think that the international community would weigh the costs and benefits. They would say, is having backlash from America, is having America be a very upset political nation really worth, no thank you, balancing out the crimes they've committed? What we would say, no thank you, is in any cases where these atrocities are being committed and they aren't reported, the international community has a good reason why. They're not just like, hey, let's let people die. So we think the ultimate harm proposed by side proposition is when they allow this to happen, when they allow the ICC, no thank you, to just go everywhere and unrealistically be everywhere and solve all these crimes. We actually see a lot of international backlash that people may not decide, may not want, because we think the ICC is ultimately a justice system. We think that the UN is a politically based system. We think, no thank you, that the ICC will make all of their judgments based on the justice system, no matter the consequences. No thank you, I'll take you in a second. No matter the consequences to the international community and political system. Yes.
The fact that nobody should be killed is not a policy, is not an ideology. It's a commonly accepted objective fact.
Okay. And when people are being killed, we go to the UN, we propose to the ICC, we don't just not know about it. We think that in every case possible, we do report them. We think in the only cases where the ICC can't actually charge someone is because they can't get to them. No thank you, it's because they can't find them, it's because they can't reach them. We think side proposition is being ultimately ignorant of the caring that is presented by the international community. So let's actually look at a bit of reconstruction quickly. We think that Jacob told you about accountability, and they said, well, really what the ICC is going to be going in and giving people justice. We think that when they're actually not mandated by the UN, when they're not mandated by the international body, they're not giving people the justice that they want. They're giving people the justice that they think they want. And what happens when that's wrong? What happens when that's not justice that's needed? What happens when they mischaracterize the situation? No, thank you. I think that's ultimately a harm we're not ready to face. Furthermore, their response to international backlash was, well, there's international backlash in the ICC too. They didn't substantiate it, they didn't provide reason. That is literally the sentence they said. I'm quoting it to you. We think a bit later they did try to say that, and they said, you know, we need to prosecute everyone. But once again, we give you this response. We think that the ICC is designed to prosecute people the international community deems to be a threat. No, thank you. So we think ultimately because they haven't really provided any substantial reasoning for why the ICC can actually provide this greater good that the international community is somehow blinded to, we think that their case really falls. So finally, let's look at this third idea that we're bringing to you on side opposition. We're going to look at this idea about blurring lines. Now, we think they first got up and told you, you know, we think this constitutes large crimes, but then they also got up and told you what happens when there's victims of rape, what happens when we're killing people, what happens when people are tortured. We think that those are smaller crimes, and those are crimes that may not necessarily occur on an international stage. What we would say is it's impossible to give the ICC, no thank you, ultimate control, because what they can now do is go into a country, take a criminal, and say, you've committed a crime, we're charging you. Now, the interesting part of this is when we see an international crime to humanity, we think that all countries recognize that. We think we recognize that as a threat, and we have the same ways of dealing with it. And that's the code, no thank you, that the ICC actually operates by. We think that when you go past this, and when you say, we're taking someone from your country, not someone from an international stage that can't be held accountable, not someone from an international stage that is a dictator, that's like a president, that's higher than the system, we think that when you take a citizen, or when you take a group of people and bring them to the ICC, you're going to be charging them on a very, no thank you, wobbly code. We think that we'll give you a few examples of where punishments differ in different countries. We think that in the USA, in some parts, we give death penalty for murder. We think that in Canada, that doesn't apply. Yeah, we're really humanitarian. No, thank you. We think that in Uganda, you can be killed for being gay. We think that in Canada and America, we certainly don't do that. We think that there's so many examples of where legal systems in different countries are completely opposite, completely polarized, and don't fit an international standard. And that's where we ultimately see the harm. We think that when the ICC can override sovereignty, when the ICC can charge for more than crimes against humanity, when the ICC can go farther in these examples that they brought up of rape and murder, we think that what ultimately happens is they get way too much power, more than they can actually be trusted with. No, thank you. And they undermine the individual legal systems and rules that individual countries are governed by. Ultimately, we think this poses a great threat. We think this is a huge harm to the international community, and we don't think this is something we want to propose. No, thank you. Furthermore, what we would say is in some cases, when these crimes are being committed on an international stage, we think that the ICC is actually like, they're not, they're designed to deal with like international threats. We think that like when it's not on an international stage, they have no business going in, they have no business actually interfering. And so it's because of this, because we think that the ICC really isn't a part of the federal system. It really isn't a part of the national system. It's a part of the international system. We don't think they can redefine that code. We think if they do so, people from different countries who abide by the laws of those countries can be unfairly charged for things that aren't illegal in that country, that aren't unfair to them. And we think that that's ultimately the greatest harm that we're trying to prevent. But furthermore, because we feel that they actually haven't justified why it's okay to have an internationally recognized body completely unaccountable to any people of any kind, not even to the greatest one, the UN, we think that that's an ultimate harm they really need to substantiate, they really need to explain, and they really, really need to justify if they want to live this way. So it's because of all these reasons that we are so proud to oppose the resolution.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure, when the Turkish team has decided how they're going to dress and what they're going to wear, to invite Mert to present the final verdict.
So far, side prop has won this debate, because side op forgot that effectiveness and all the benefits were relative, ladies and gentlemen. The idea of side proposition today, the burden of the proposition was not to show you that it will be fully efficient, was to show you that it will be much more relatively beneficial, relatively efficient than side opposition's world out, ladies and gentlemen, as its fundamental mistake has done on side opposition, ladies and gentlemen. Two clashes. Firstly, what's this debate about? Do we have a burden? And even if, what would be to happen? And secondly, ladies and gentlemen, what is the practical harms of this? And what is the situation going to be happening with the United Countries that United States of America? Firstly, what's this debate about? We told you that this tournament has a wonderful CA, ladies and gentlemen, which gives the motion for a reason. Ladies and gentlemen, this motion is not a this house would motion for some reasons. This motion is that this house believes that motion. This motion does not actively say this motion is about comparing which system is better and not actively doing something. But even if it was, ladies and gentlemen, they simply mistakenly do something wrong. They simply forgot the fact that effectiveness is relative. Because we told you that the current system is not relative, is not efficient at all. We told you countries like the United States of America does not have to care about the international court. Can do whatever they want, whenever they want, kill in Afghanistan, kill in Iraq, and how are you going to stop this? No answer, ladies and gentlemen. Their whole analysis was to show you that prop does not have benefits. Even if they were true, even if we could not prosecute these people, we can still investigate, ladies and gentlemen. Even if their analysis was true, we can still show the whole world and show the whole media that these things were done. The whole world that what they have done was evil, and that's why they should be in a bad position, ladies and gentlemen. No one else about how important that investigation was, how important media was in the case of ICC, no analysis. But we also believe that we can actually prosecute people. We can punish them. We can, if they do not obey, we can put international pressures on them, ladies and gentlemen. We think there's a reason why the motion says authority. Authority can be defined by proposition, and as proposition we define authority as, ladies and gentlemen, is a big authority that can actually does this by our first speaker, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we can have the authority in this debate because we think this is not fundamentally true. So, ladies and gentlemen, even if they were true, they miss out one of the fundamental arguments about investigating and also, ladies and gentlemen, the media attention. Now, secondly, their analysis was this. Oh, it is actually good right now, the ICC is working right now because we have Libya accountable. Factually incorrect, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, what we have done in the case of Libya was to say, Libya, you did something bad. You didn't punish them. You didn't say anything to them. You didn't actively punish anything, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a reason, and there's a fundamental difference between holding accountable and punishing them. And ladies and gentlemen, they have not understood this so far. So that's why this analysis is simply fallacious. Now, let's get the second idea about their accountability analysis. We think, ladies and gentlemen, even if we were not going to hold these people accountable, these are 15 lawyers that go there on the basis of merit. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't necessarily believe that why these lawyers will be having incentive to do bad things. While on the other hand, ladies and gentlemen, we believe holding accountable countries like the United States of America and China is much more important because they have an incentive to do bad things, ladies and gentlemen, and they have done it in Iraq and Afghanistan. We think this is relative again, and in terms of relativity, this is much better to be holding this accountable, not 15 Greek, geek, and like merit-based lawyers, ladies and gentlemen. Now, let's get this issue about sovereignty. We think, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, sovereignty, we don't care. We don't care because, ladies and gentlemen, if a country uses its sovereignty to kill people, to force people for, ladies and gentlemen, uncruel treatment in Guantanamo Bay, we don't think that this sovereignty is a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. We think the sovereignty right is being made up by the countries like the United States of America, and we don't care, ladies and gentlemen. If we save one more life, we're gladly to overrule the idea of sovereignty because sovereignty does not work, and we don't care, ladies and gentlemen. And now, let's get the last analysis about side of opposition, about incentivization, ladies and gentlemen. US, no thank you, and US and so forth will be decentralized. They're not incentivized today, ladies and gentlemen. They are not even in the ICC authority, ladies and gentlemen. So how are they going to be decentralized? No, not because they're not actively in the thing anyway. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what this debate was about fundamentally, we told you that this debate was relatively making people's lives better, ladies and gentlemen. We told you that we'll be preventing people from rape, preventing from countries that told that they can do whatever they want, whenever they want. Countries like the United States of America. We think the core of this debate was to compare a world in which countries like China did not violate human rights, did not do anything bad, ladies and gentlemen, until we're comparing it to our world where countries like the United States of America invaded the whole world. We think because we provide deterrence, because we actively provide retribution, ladies and gentlemen, we think we're on the part of the side that has provided better benefits so far, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you. I'll take you. No, thank you. No, thank you. Sorry. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the principal analysis that we have in this debate was this. Look, there are some things that we can never leave to countries. By our first speaker, they told you that there are countries that can define laws as different as they want, and this is good, ladies and gentlemen. They gave you the examples of Uganda and America, and Uganda is good to kill gay, and in America it's not. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we think this wrongdoing is a very bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. This argument is a very bad thing, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think this argument has practical benefits. While in the case of other, ladies and gentlemen, we think laws are not relative. The human rights are not relative nor subjective, ladies and gentlemen. The human rights are objective, and it should be deferred, and it should be interpreted the same way as it is done in the other countries, ladies and gentlemen. No way that we don't recognize the Uganda government saying that I don't recognize this right, ladies and gentlemen. We think these rights are not relative and not subjective, and that's what we have a duty, I'll take you in a second, as the ICC to promote these ideas, to promote an international law in which we can force these countries to obey the international principles that we have, ladies and gentlemen, so that they won't be getting the crazy ideas and killing gay people, like South opposition has brilliantly pointed out in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, please.
So you told us in your model that this is all about, uncovering things to the world when we have a world that already knows about what the U.S. does. You haven't shown us how this is going to be more effective. What does your model actually accomplish to serve the purpose of the ICC?
Ladies and gentlemen, my first point. But secondly, we fundamentally disagree on the assumption that people already know. Ladies and gentlemen, even if they did know, there's a difference between active investigation, between a very legitimate ICC court that has many lawyers and many places to investigate, than a CNN reporter just clicking and posting a photo, ladies and gentlemen. There's a fundamental difference. And secondly, ladies and gentlemen, they can't prove as CNN that they have done this, but an international court can prove this, and there's a fundamental difference. And when they prove this, what happens? All the international countries say that, oh, wait a minute, America, you should not be doing this, because now there's a proof, ladies and gentlemen. There's a simple and fundamental difference in those areas. And we think side opposition so far has manipulated this debate, ladies and gentlemen. So what is the main idea that we have defended? Because we think this debate was about grounds. And we think, ladies and gentlemen, the grounds of side proposition was simply stronger. Because we deny any single practical benefit of side opposition when we compare. Even if the practical analysis of side opposition was true, our last analysis is this. It is never compatible by preventing rape. Never compatible to saving lives. We think, ladies and gentlemen, even if people are desensitized, even if we don't have accountability, ladies and gentlemen, we think in a world that our benefit is simply outweighs much more, ladies and gentlemen. They can never win this debate by comparing the benefit of accountability to a benefit of saving lives, ladies and gentlemen. And that was the ground of this debate. And that's the ground that we win this debate in which, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Arslan to present the final substantive negative speech. 8 minutes. Sorry, just hang on a sec. we only want 4 minutes.
Sounds over already.
It's not a reply. Technology is a wonderful thing.
You just do this super old school.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right. Doesn't matter about he's not the first proposition, but that's okay.
We think side proposition came into this debate with some pretty good intentions. They wanted to help the world. They wanted to make it so that the ICC can actually go out and help the rest of the world. So their intentions were fine. But we think their logic, their analysis, and basically everything else they brought forward today was flawed. We think ultimately, under their resolution, we'll have more and more ideas, we'll have more and more talk, but ultimately what would happen is that not only the ICC, the United Nations as a whole would be disengaged and would be ineffective. And we think that's the reason that opposition has already won this debate. But as the third speaker, what I'm essentially going to do is I'm going to go through everything we've talked about so far and really prove why we have indeed taken this. So I'm going to do that with two main themes of clash. First, I'm going to talk about whether this will actually increase the capabilities of the ICC. But then I'm going to talk about if the ICC actually deserves this new power, even if it gets it. So let's go into this first theme. Will it increase the abilities of the ICC? So this was really started by the first proposition, where they said right now the ICC is made up of very, very biased countries, none of whom have all of whom have their own interests, and none of whom want to deal with the actual problem. They told you how some countries may not want to go investigate a certain bad person, and that's an inherent issue. So we have a couple of things to say to that. First of all, we think this conversation of countries is a good thing. We don't think having 15 lawyers who aren't accountable to anybody but themselves deciding who's criminal and who's not is a good thing. We think by having conversation involved, by having countries from the West and from the East, countries from the North and from the South involved in that conversation, we can ultimately decide whether a person actually deserves to get convicted, whether a person actually deserves to be prosecuted. No thank you. We think that in a situation where people actually deserve to get punished, we punish them. We brought forward the example of Libya. They simply misstated that nobody in Libya was punished. We think the people of Libya weren't punished because they didn't deserve to get punished. But the dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, he was convicted, he was prosecuted, and he was just killed. No, thank you. And he was killed before they got a chance to actually throw him in jail. Meaning ultimately, the ICC has the ability to convict people, has the ability to prosecute people. Sure.
In order to get rid of Gaddafi, we had to make a huge civil war. We couldn't prosecute him nor send him to prison, ladies and gentlemen.
Sir, the only justification that the ICC essentially had at that point to throw Gaddafi in jail was because of the actions of the civil war. We think before that, the ICC didn't actually have any reason to do that, and we think that's something fundamental that they've missed. So let's move on. They talk about this idea of the United States and China, and how in the status quo, they don't get punished, and they need to. And we think we have to talk about this idea of a cost-benefit analysis of this. We think right now, if the ICC and the United Nations through that goes and punishes the US or goes and punishes China, China and the United States are going to have an inherent vendetta against the United Nations as a whole. That means the next time that they need to pass something in the Security Council, the US or China might veto that. We think that's an inherent issue. We think these countries need to buy into the United Nations, need to buy into the ICC for it to work. That's something that we brought up in our first speech and our second speech that was not responded to. No, thank you. Speaking of this idea, so beyond that, we also brought up this idea in our second point about disengagement. We think that was essentially our entire second point. So at first, in their first speech, they really had no real background, they had no real response to that. But in their second speech, they tried to give something. They tried to say that there will be international backlash against the United States, so the United States would be forced to engage. We think that's inherently false. We don't think any country in the world can actually put sanctions on the US. We don't think any country in the world can actually get mad at China. We think these are the two biggest economies in the world, two of the biggest populations in the world. We don't think anybody has the capacity or the justification to actually get mad at them. That's something inherent that they did not realize at any point in this speech. We think in the status quo, we have to go for the best benefit. We have to go for the argumentation of harm reduction. We think right now, although we can't get at the US or China, we can get at everybody else. Under their model, we can't get at nobody. Sure.
Okay, please tell us how you catch Omar al-Bashir when he is hiding in a non-member state.
We think non-member states are actually responsible also to the ICC. That's something we fundamentally denied. We think Libya was a non-member state. But when a member state complains to the ICC about a non-member state, we can go after that non-member state. We think there are a lot of responsible people in the ICC that care about the entire international community right now. Somebody will complain about Omar al-Bashir, or whoever that was. So we think with that said, let's move on to the second thing. Is the ICC deserving of this absolute power? Now what Proposition said is that the ICC needs all the power it can get to fight the bad guys, so we can give them anything without any restrictions whatsoever. So first of all, we think in the status quo, if somebody is so bad that they deserve to get attacked by the ICC, if they deserve to get prosecuted, there will be a country who will ask for them to get prosecuted. We think if no country in the ICC asks for a certain person to be taken to court or taken to prosecution, we don't think they actually deserve to get taken to prosecution. We think if nobody cares, there must be no reason to actually take them to this type of court. We think their laughing isn't enough a justification to fight that. They try to bring up this example of the United States once again. Again, we think if the United States disengages, how is the ICC going to catch this criminal? If the United States doesn't give its army, doesn't give its name, how is the ICC going to go catch Bashar al-Assad? We think just prosecuting and just saying to them, hey, you did something wrong, isn't enough. The United Nations needs the capacity to go in and actually capture these people. And we think without these powerful countries, we can't do that. That's an inherent harm that they did not realize. No thank you. So let's move on to this other idea that we brought up, about how the ICC is unaccountable. We think just like everything else we brought up, Proposition tried to laugh a little bit in there while they're sitting down and try to pass it as something ridiculous. We don't think that's the way it works. We don't think they actually acknowledge that. We think what we told you is that when an organization of 15 lawyers who aren't accountable to anybody can make decisions without the approval of the international community, that's inherently wrong. We told you that the responsibility of the ICC is to do things that helps everybody in the world. And when nobody in the world asks them, we don't see a reason to do that. We talked to you about this idea of sovereignty. What we told you in my partner Tatiana's speech is that under their model, the ICC can develop the capacities to go into situations and deal with crimes and deal with acts of war that the country themselves may want to deal with. I think that's an inherent thing that we have to allow countries to have. We think ultimately, the only time the ICC should go in is when they want to. A direct quote from the first proposition was that we should let the ICC do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. That was a direct quote that they said, and we think that's absolutely false. We think having any organization, no matter who it belongs to, not be accountable to anybody, not be accountable to any people, is inherently wrong, is inherently unjustified. So what am I really talking about today? We think what we brought up on the side of proposition is the idea of the status quo, how we want to help the most amount of people possible. We think under the model of proposition, nobody would get helped because everybody who can help people would be disengaged. But under the status quo, under what opposition wants, what would happen is that the majority of the people would get help. So we think when you're making a decision on who to give your ballot for, you have to decide who helps the most number of people, who does the actions that engages the majority of the number of people. We think that group is opposition, and we think opposition has clearly taken this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to invite Jakob to present the reply speech for the negatives.
So, side opposition and side government do want to help the international community. And we think that there are ways that the International Criminal Court can do that. But we'd say that when you invalidate everything that the International Criminal Court is able to do, because you're taking away the mechanism that allows them to do it, which is the ability to have the support of the international community, we say that that's one of the major things that side government is neglecting, that makes their motion ineffective, that makes this belief debate into something unbelievably infeasible. We think that on many grounds today we've won as side opposition. But as the reply speaker for side opposition, I'd like to summarize today's debate into two questions. One, should the ICC take action whenever they want? Two, will they be able to take action whenever they want? Let's look at what this debate came down to. So, asking that first question of should they take action whenever they want, side government said yes. Side government said all law is universal and there is no way that the International Criminal Court can do anything that is incorrect by the means of the people, because they are this benevolent, all-knowing God that has everything involving law figured out. We said that that wasn't the case for a number of reasons. We said, one, a justice system works when that justice system is accountable to the people and the people buy into that justice system because of that. We said that like one of the main reasons that the justice system in any nation works is because the people buy that that is their justice system. But when you take this objective code, seemingly objective code rather, and attempt to impose it on people, that isn't necessarily going to work, that isn't necessarily fair, and that isn't the ICC's responsibility, burden, or place in society. Side government didn't give us a response to that. They dropped that point entirely. They just kept trying to coming back with this benevolent idea that we didn't agree with on a number of grounds. We think that on the universality of law, we clearly took that debate. But furthermore, on the should they take action whenever they want, we told you that they shouldn't, merely because they're not accountable to people. And we say that like one buy-in is very important when it comes to the universality of law. But another big thing is when you have a body that can do whatever it wants under any circumstances for any reason, we see that that body is not necessarily always able to act in the interest of the global community, but it doesn't have any backlash for not doing so. And when that international body can cause a lot of problems for the international community, we said that that was inherently wrong. Down the bench today, we told you that if the international community sees the detriments of an ICC that is unaccountable, it will have backlash that harms these people, that, you know, member states or not member states, the global community is the global community, and the global community gets harmed. Side government didn't give you a response to that idea. They told you accountability doesn't matter because these people are benevolent actors. But whether you're benevolent or not, if you cause actions or take actions that harm people, that is inherently problematic. And the political backlash can cause many people to lose faith in the ICC, can make the ICC ineffective, which coincidentally is this next question I'm about to get into, where we say that they shouldn't take action whenever they want. Let's look at the second question. Will they be able to take action whenever they want? We told you, first of all, no. We say that like if the US or China or Russia or all these big players disengage, engage because there seem to be like the ICC is infringing upon their sovereignty, that becomes bad. Most importantly, because the ICC can't take action without a body to take the actions with. If it doesn't have an army, it needs nations to have armies to go help. We said that down the bench today, you need an ICC that's able to enforce justice if justice has been called for. What have they told you? They told you that like the people are obviously able to do whatever they want just because we passed law. We said that feasibly, whether or not you believe or disbelieve something, you have to allow for emotion or circumstance that allows for justice to be served. And if disengaged populaces keep the ICC from serving justice, that harms the international community in circumstances where the international community needs help. We clearly run that area of clash, but then they told you it's not even about action, it's just about media. It's not even about prosecuting people, it's just about telling people information. We say that like when information is circulating in our world today and action hasn't been taken, it's clearly not always about information. It's about taking action. And when you render a body unable to take action because of ineffectiveness, you make the ICC a useless actor to harm the global community, and that's why this motion has clearly fallen today. Thank you.
Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the reply speech from the affirmatives are to come. No, we're not giving you 8 minutes, just 4 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, side proposition today have argued not to be the best system in the world. We argued to be the relatively better system compared to the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. We did that on 3 bases. First of all, we showed you how we had relatively better effect. Then we showed you how we have relatively better accountability. Then, as third, we showed you how we have better relative justice. Coming to effect, how does side proposition have more effect? Well, we said we give ICC the power to enter countries, to prosecute people. We believe, and how do we do that? We believe countries will allow us to do that because of all the argumentation my speakers have given. First of all, the ICC can punish countries. Second of all, because of active investigation, countries and other people care inherently more about what's going on, and thereby there's more international backlash. Even if all those argumentation doesn't convince you, that has nothing to do with the debate, because this House believes that the ICC should have the power, should have the power to enter countries and should have the authority to enter countries debate. Inherently in this debate, we accept ICC as a group which has the power, which has the relative strength to enter countries. We believe this is irrelevant. Now, what was this debate about in effectivity? We said we have to give ICC power, or we cannot prosecute people and punish people like Ömer al-Bashir, who effectively killed 1 million people, ladies and gentlemen. What was side opposition's answer at OP3? They said if people cared about what was going on, they would have already told the ICC to prosecute Ömer al-Bashir. We believe killing 1 million people, we believe genocide is very, very important, and we see that the system is obviously not working, ladies and gentlemen. Then we say even if we fail all of that in effectivity, we still prove that by investigation we inherently give people the need and the inherent possibility to care about what's going on in those countries. Now, moving on to accountability, we say that obviously 15 lawyers whom we can fire are more accountable than the US, Russia, and China, side opposition defined as untouchable by anyone else in the world, ladies and gentlemen. We believe it's as simple as that. Now, then we ask them the question, what should the ICC be accountable for? All that the opposition team said that they might judge people badly. We believe the justice system inherently is about judging. We believe the justice system is about how we judge people and whether or not we find them as guilty or not. The whole argumentation effectively shows you why their justice system doesn't work either, ladies and gentlemen. Now, coming to justice, we believe we present relatively better justice. How do we do that? Because side opposition doesn't have any justice at all. Why? Because we as the ICC go into countries and prosecute people if the governments and other governments if the government has failed to do so and if there is no justice. Thereby, when the ICC prosecutes certain people, thereby when the ICC punishes people, we inherently gives a certain amount of justice. We do accept this might be international justice and that the country's laws may be different, but we obviously believe that in international justice and laws such as killing humans should be punished, hurting people should be punished, are inherently and obviously better than no justice at all. That is the burden side op had to justify in this debate. And furthermore, we say the whole mandate and the whole reason of justice is that Supreme Courts are not accountable, that we value Supreme Courts and we trust them because they should have the right to intervene when others can. They should be able to intervene when others cannot, and thereby we give the ICC the same power so that they can intervene. Through and through, Prop obviously wins this debate because we have the relatively better effect, relatively better justice, and relatively better in accountability. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, we urge you to go Prop.